Hey, thank you. And thanks for inviting me to be with you today. And let me compliment you for the work that you do as a service organization in this community. All of us need to do a little bit more than just show up for work, and that's what service clubs do. So, you do more than showing up for work, and put it that way. And I compliment you for doing it. This morning, we have a very impressive speaker that I've known for many years. Wayne Perky was a radio personality at WHAS in Louisville for a long time, and was a strong voice and advocate for a lot of different causes, very well known, a very successful radio personality. But as often happens when one has looked at the problems of Kentucky, the opportunities of Kentucky for a long period of time, you realize that we need to place more emphasis on education. And many people that have finished their working career, making a living career, gravitate to education as I have done. And Wayne Perky is the same way. He's today here on behalf of the Pritchard Committee, which he will probably explain a little bit more about. I will say, Wayne, I was a member of the Pritchard Committee in 1987 when I decided to run for lieutenant governor. They invited me to resign because they're a non-political group and they didn't want to get involved in politics. Actually, Brereton Jones was likewise a member of the Pritchard Committee in 1987. He was going to run for lieutenant governor. They invited him to resign also. He won. I had to back off 3 or 4 years. But then, in fact, when I got out of politics again, they invited me to come back on. Yep. So I'm now back on the Pritchard Committee. And it is the most effective public advocacy group in Kentucky, and one of the most effective advocacy groups on behalf of elementary and secondary education in the United States. And we're very fortunate to have the services of the Pritchard Committee and have people like Wayne that would come out and get us as citizens and communities more involved and more invigorated to promote the cause of education. And so Wayne has been invited here today to go into detail on that. But he's an active service club member, having been in the Louisville Rotary Club for many years and president of the Louisville Rotary Club, I guess, 2003, 2004, Rotarian of the Year in Louisville in 2002. So a person that understands the need of people and organizations to get involved and do something for the entire community. So he's here today to inspire us to do even more. And with that, I introduce to you Wayne Perky. Wayne.
Thank you, Governor. Lovely, thank you. Thank you, Governor. Whoa. Thank you for inviting me. When I was in Hopkinsville 2 weeks ago, and I realized, I read the description, saving the world, one child, one community at a time, I knew I was singing to the choir. And Donna Radcliffe, when she and I agreed that I was coming today, said, "You're absolutely right." Let me introduce you to Pat Hite. Pat's my resident expert. What happens when I go to a meeting like this is, sometimes people ask me questions that are way beyond my ken. So the Pritchard Committee is kind to me and generally will have someone like Pat come. Pat is the Child Care Resource and Referral Specialist who works in the Big Sandy region. Thank you for... There you are. In October 2008, Bob Sexton, who was the longtime executive director and for the longest time the only executive director of the Pritchard Committee for Academic Excellence, wrote an op-ed piece on the occasion of the 25th anniversary of the Pritchard Committee. And I called Bob and said, "Listen, I retired, I'm doing after-dinner speeches, I've joined the National Speakers Association, I'm doing beauty pageants and all those things, but you guys need another advocate, and it ought to be me." And Bob said, come over and let's sit down and talk. So he explained to me that the Pritchard Committee was just about to launch Strong Start Kentucky, an emphasis on quality early childhood education. Along with Governor Patton, the Pritchard Committee was part of the folks who was part of the muscle that pushed through the Kentucky Education Reform Act in 1990. At that time, when that bill passed, we were the buzz of the education world. Everybody in education in America was talking about what we were doing in Kentucky. We were absolutely breaking new ground and providing new leadership in education. But you know, things that are new have lots of glitter and glisten, and they're pretty shiny, but occasionally things, the longer you go, kind of wears off a little bit. And it's time now to talk about where we are, where we've come from, and where we're going to go. At this point, we now rank about, depending on who's doing the measuring and what scale they're using, Kentucky now ranks about number 34, 35, 36, 37. Now you might say that ain't top 10, but at least we no longer have to say thank God for Mississippi, right? We have come a long way, and the question is, where do we go from here? And at that point, a couple of years ago, Bob and the group at the Pritchard Committee, along with the governor, were putting things at arm's length and thinking, how do we make the next leap? What's the next important move to make? And it was decided that what we really need to do is focus on quality, universally available early childhood education. It really is a myth that if a child shows up for kindergarten and isn't ready for school, he or she will catch up. It just doesn't happen. And the more time that the teacher has to spend with the child that is behind, who shows up and doesn't know his colors and can't write his own name and can't sing A, B, C, D, E, F, a little bit, you know, that's the child that demands more attention and time. And that attention and time is taken away from the other children in the classroom. So the truth is that the bar is lowered for everybody in the room. So we believe that the next emphasis needs to be on quality early childhood education. What research tells us is that children's brains are 90% formed by the time they're 3 years old. Think about your own children and your grandchild coming into the world. They're little sponges. They want to see everything, they want to touch everything, they want to hold everything. Kids are just little sponges, and they learn at an alarming rate. Research tells us that children who come from well-to-do families know by the time they're about 5 years old, they know about 1,100 words. Children from a middle-class family know about 600 words, and children from a lower-income family know about 300 words. The disparity really is remarkable. If you were to send your child, well, let me back up a little bit. Is there a banker in the room? Are you? Are you? If I were to tell you that if you were to invest your money with me, that in somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 15 years, I would give you back at least, I guarantee you, I'll give you back at least double your money, maybe up to 17 times as much as you invested with me, what would you say?
Be a pretty good deal.
You'd do that deal.
Yeah.
Well, let me give you some numbers to look at. In Kentucky, right now, to send a child, to give a child quality early childhood education, the cost is about, I hope you can see this all the way around the room, is about $5,888 for a year. To send your child or grandchild to one of the public higher education institutions in Kentucky, Eastern or Western or Moorhead or Murray, I don't know where it is, at Pikeville, Louisville, or UK, costs on average about $6,900, these numbers are new to me, $6,935, about. What does it cost for a year, tuition and books
The
UPike?
list price is about $22,000 a
Okay.
year, but their scholarships reduce that to about, with room and board, to about $16,000.
Okay, gotcha. Community colleges obviously are a little less expensive. It's about $3,750 generally in a community college. To incarcerate someone in the Commonwealth of Kentucky for a year, I bet the governor can tell you, it costs about $19,031. 40 years of research by people like the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis tell us that children who get quality early childhood education are less likely to need remedial education. They're less likely to have to repeat a grade. They're less likely to drop out of school. They're less likely to smoke. They're less likely to become teenage parents. And they're less likely to wind up right here. So what I'm suggesting to you is that if we make this investment, we may not have to make this investment. And for every one of these we save, we could do 3 of these. We could do this and have change left over. it just makes sense. It just makes sense to invest in kids when they're young so that we don't have to take care of them later, whether they're on the welfare rolls or whether they're incarcerated. Now, you're the leaders in your community. That's what I said to Bob. Let me talk to folks in Kiwanis clubs and Rotary clubs because they're the folks who are the movers and shakers. They're the leaders in their communities. They're the ones who make things happen, and they're the folks who can make a difference. Now, we thought we were going to get enough money in, I say we, I'm an advocate. I'm not a member of the committee itself. You are, and you're part of the Strong Start group, right, Pat? Are you not? Okay. So I can be just a dad. You know, I can talk about things as a taxpayer, as a citizen, as a voter. We thought it was going to get through 2 years ago, and it didn't happen. There were $15 million allocated in this year's budget proposed by the House Education Committee that was going to increase the funding for 4,400 youngsters 3 and 4 years old. The Senate took out 7.5, and the House dropped the other 7.5. So the money isn't included. It isn't going to happen this time. So you got to keep on knocking on that door, I guess. You know, you just got to keep on trying. One can't give up. I have 5 children. 4 of them have higher degrees, have advanced degrees. I have a doctor and a lawyer, and I've got a marketing specialist, and I've got an author. He's a senior writer for a magazine, going to write the next J.R.R. Tolkien novel, I suppose. But they had a stay-at-home mom. There was somebody waiting at the door when they got home in the afternoon. What we know is that 63% of the mothers of children 6 and under are in the workforce. For one reason or another, they're not at home. So the question is, what's happening with those children? You and I cannot afford to have those children simply warehoused somewhere watching TV and cartoons all day long. We have an investment in those kids. The truth it is, pay me now or pay me later. We invest in the kids in this place, or we invest in them somehow, take care of them somehow later. What we know is that children who do get a quality early childhood education, when they're ready for kindergarten and first grade, when they come through, they're more likely to go through school without having to repeat a grade. They're more likely to finish high school. They're more likely to go on to college or technical school. They're more likely to wind up with a good paying job. They're more likely to become your clients, your customers, your investors. They're going to become the leaders of our community. Who knows how many Bill Gates and Steve Jobs we lose because we lost them before they began. My 5th child went to the University of Kentucky and had a fabulous time. He had so much fun, they invited him to come home. Well, you know, not all of us are going to be rocket scientists. Not all of us are going to be lawyers and doctors, you know. Fast forward 20 years, Wayne's now found his sea legs. He's the IT director for the Healing Place. Mm-hmm. He's setting up the network across the Commonwealth. You know, he's found his niche, and now he's doing fine. So, but my kids had a stay-at-home mom. I learned about Winnie the Pooh and all that great children's literature reading to my children at bedtime. You know, Mr. Obama might suggest that the dads ought to be more involved with their children. But if the dad isn't there, the dad isn't there. And we can pretend and wish that the dad were there, or we can deal with the world as it really is and say, well, if the dad isn't there, then what are you and I going to do about that? What we're going to do about that is give them a hand. We're going to try to make sure that they have a helping hand up. We're going to make sure that there's an investment that's made so that we don't lose them before they start. I mean, I think the First Lady's heart's in the right place when she says we ought to raise the dropout age from 16 to 18. Is there an educator in the room other than Pat? You are?
Nursing, yeah.
What did you do? What do you teach?
I teach nursing classes, associate degree nursing classes.
Do you? Okay. Now imagine that you're teaching junior year in high school, and you're teaching a social studies class, and you've got a room full of 35, 40 kids. And one of the kids in there is a young man who's 17 years old, who's reading at a 3rd grade level, and he doesn't want to be there. What's the atmosphere going to be like in that class?
It's going to disrupt everything else.
And all the other kids are going to be affected and there will be an impact on the entire classroom, all right? Yeah. See, the question is, if you're going to read a novel, are you going to start with the last 2 chapters, or are you going to begin at the beginning? And I think, and the message I'm giving you today is that we need to start at the beginning. We can't wait until we lose them. We just can't wait. We need to make the investment early. We need to make the investment before they fall through the cracks. In the Courier Journal a couple of years ago, it was the Economist Forum said, Kentucky's economic growth has been far outpaced by other southern states during the past 4 decades, mainly because of a lack of investment in education and a dwindling manufacturing base. Increasing educational attainment is the best way for Kentucky to grow, especially as the state continues to lose manufacturing jobs. When I came to Kentucky in 1969, there were 26,000 people employed at GE's Appliance Park. Now they're between 4 and 5 and 6. Kind of both. There's a little enthusiasm out there now because of the new freezers that they're building, and there's hope that they will grow a little bit and jobs will come. International Harvester is gone. Brown Williamson is gone. Philip Morris ain't there. I had a lovely time driving up here today because I grew up just south of you down in East Tennessee. And when I was in high school, my junior and senior year in high school, there were several guys on the Lake City High School football team who went off to Detroit in the summertime, worked in the car factories and the steel mills, and then came home and went to the next year. Some of them dropped out at 17 and stayed there, worked 30, 40 years, retired, came back, and now they're fishing on Norris Lake. I went to the University of Tennessee. I worked a year, dropped out because I ran out of money, and I got a job, and I went back, and I changed majors 3 times, and I never could figure out what I really wanted to be when I grew up. I found a part-time job in radio. I was having too much fun because I grew up, and work was work, and I was having fun. So how could that possibly be a great career? But I figured I'd keep on doing this till I figure out what I'm going to be when I grow up. And I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to be when I grow up. But life's an evolution, isn't it? And we kind of figure things out along as we go. The point of all that is, you just can't anymore make it with merely a high school diploma. It just isn't good enough anymore. Those guys who finished 30 years with General Motors in Detroit and came back home, those days are long gone. It just doesn't happen. On the way here, I'm listening to WEKU radio, and there's a fellow on the air being interviewed who now runs in an automobile factory. He's a guy from Louisville, Kentucky, who happens to be working in southern Indiana. He operates robots that are doing all the welding on the automobiles. Jobs that used to be done by several people are now being done by one person with robots and his computer. Brawn alone is just not enough anymore. We just can't depend on that anymore. You remember Frank McCord? He was the author. He's an Irishman who immigrated to New York when he was a teenager, and he went out and finished school and taught in the New York public schools forever. Wrote a book called Angela's Ashes that became a big hit. He's written several more. He said, children are our most important asset. Who's going to be taking care of you and me in our old age? The children we're investing in now, who are going to be the Steve Jobs and the Bill Gates, the ones who come along. Last summer, New York Times columnist David Brooks, who's one of my favorites, wrote, by age 5, it is possible to predict with depressing accuracy who will graduate from high school and college and who won't. By age 5, we can tell. We can't wait till they're 17 and 18 years old. We just can't. The need for new prisons is forecast, I bet you know this, forecast by the performance of 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. We can't wait. Go ahead.
My daughter is an expert in early childhood development. That's her career. And as a practical purpose, I thought that your only really responsibility to a child was to protect them and nurture them and just sort of, let them grow up.
Love them.
And, I thought they were born with a brain, but they're not. She got me to read a book, the Brain Within or something, by some guy, and it opened my eyes. That was like Saul on the road to Damascus, because we're born with an erector set. We're born with a lot more brain cells than we'll ever need. And experiences connect those brain cells in ways that make a brain. And that happens, as you say, within those first 5 or 6 years. And so then when I understood that, when I understood what was happening, you're born with a muscle, and you say, well, you just exercise that muscle and it'll develop. You're born with a heart. Well, you just protect that heart. But you're not born with a brain. You're born with an erector set. And that brain has got to be, whatever that brain's going to become, is going to be dictated by 80% by the time they're 4 or 5 years old. So you need meaningful experiences. Now, most of us, like you say, you grow up at home with a mom, and she's tending the garden, and you've got challenges in life, and my parents would be arrested for child abuse and child neglect if you let children do now what we let children do. But though, if you survived, those were tremendous learning experiences. Well, that's as Wayne said, that's not the way it is now. So moms are working now. Moms were working back then, right, but they were working at home,
right,
and they were sewing, and they were washing, and they were growing the garden. And my mother worked, contributed as much to the family wealth as my father did, but she did it all in the home. So that was an experience that you naturally got, those developmental activities. Well, now the mom takes the kid to a daycare, and there's where you're talking about quality child care. If you're just taking them and put them in a crib and leave them all day, you remember with the Ceausescu from Hungary, or the dictator from Hungary, that they had these orphanages where they had warehoused orphans, just simply put them in a crib, fed them, and gave them no personal attention. Their brain was a third the biggest. I mean, it's just amazing when you realize what the brain is and what it takes to develop the kind of brain to have the kind of people we want. So, like I said, I became an apostle, and we did the Kids Now program was our 2000 initiative, and it again was one of the more innovative national programs for early childhood development. Like many other programs, if it were adequately funded, it would do a heck of a lot better job. Right. But this is really, really an important subject.
I want to pass along a compliment to the governor. I was at a meeting in Louisville, Pritchard Committee folks, last week, and one of them said, well, whether you think that Pikeville ought to be a part of the system or not a part of the system, at least Paul got us talking about education in Kentucky. And everybody was talking about education. And so there were compliments passed along. Everything I've talked about is in this brochure, and I ask you to please take it with you. I also have, and I give you an opportunity to sign up for information that comes from the Pritchard Committee. We won't inundate you with stuff, but Pat, would you pass one back there? But if you'd like to know, we can send you an email update and let you know about the things that are on the front burners and what's going on and what's happening next. Well, you can tell your elected officials what they think. I think the governor will tell you that people who represent us in Frankfort want to know what we think and how we feel. And they'd like, I believe, to know how we wish them to vote and what we think is important. We understand that the government has a limited amount of funds, and you can only divide the baby in so many directions. So where do we want them to put the emphasis? What do we want to make sure they know we think is really important? And we believe education is truly important.
The squeaking wheel gets the grease. They do cumulatively listen to what the people want most. If a blacktop road is the thing they hear the most, they're going to put more money into blacktop roads. It's just human nature. And as Wayne says, there's never enough to do everything that truly needs to be done. And they have to make choices. And they make those choices based on what they perceive to be the desire of the people. It's just the way it works, the way it's supposed to work.
That's exactly right.
But you got to communicate with them.
Yeah, you can't let them guess what we think. Jefferson County is the largest county in Kentucky and has the biggest population, but the figures are pretty interesting. A couple of years ago, they did an education pipeline study. 10,100 babies born in Jefferson County every year. It's a lot of kids. 68% of them will graduate from high school. Only 2 out of 3 will graduate from high school. 54% of them will go on to a technical school or college. After the first year, 41% will still be in school. And 25% will graduate from technical school or college. Only 1 out of 4. 1 out of 4. Now, stay in school 16 to 18 might be a good idea. But if the kid's not reading at grade level, we need to start in the beginning. Give them the start so that they're ready when they come out of school. Anything else? Anybody else? Well, John F. Kennedy was one of my heroes, and he said, let us think of education as the means of developing our greatest abilities, because in each of us there's a private hope and dream which, fulfilled, can be translated into benefit for everyone and greater strength for our nation. Thank you very much for letting me come talk to you.